Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Once again, dear ones, welcome. Here's a little song. Its relevance will become apparent as the talk unfolds. It's called A Devotee's Prayer. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, take my hand. Without thee I may fall. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, pull me on. O Lord, pull me on. Without thee I may stray. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, pull me on. Without thee I may fall. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, draw me near. O Lord, draw me near. Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, fill this heart. 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 Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. Om. Amen. So this morning's topic is sinking into silence. Finding reverence, abandoning selfishness, sinking into silence, setting aside the mirror. We have been discussing these 4 steps in spiritual practice and how they integrate. Last week we reviewed the significance and principles of selflessness. This morning we'll take up sinking into silence. If you have not come to the conclusion reached in this first short poem, perhaps you don't even need to think about these things. And this is very sincerely meant. We awaken as we awaken. And so here's the poem. Being, creating, doing, sharing. The joys of these is why we're here. When you're truly tired of this, just sign off and head for home. Being, creating, doing, sharing. The joys of these is why we're here. When you're truly tired of this, just sign off and head for home. So who is being addressed here? The divine being as manifested in us is what has created our experiences. At some point, we may, and all of us will, we're told, get ready to sign off from this experience realm and head for home. When you do feel ready to head for home, then this next poem may be of interest. Saying those sacred syllables Guru gave me, my mind somehow slipped into a great silence and was stilled. Nothing more to say. Saying those sacred syllables Guru gave me, my mind somehow slipped into a great silence and was stilled. Nothing more to say. The truth of your being cannot be expressed in words, however articulate or eloquent those words may be. As we well know, sages and saints and sages down through the ages left us many beautiful, uplifting attempts to tell us what they know. Yet however inspiring their hymns and testimonies may be, it is only in the deep silence of your inner being that you discover what they are pointing toward. This morning, we'll talk about how to sink into that great silence. The truth of your being cannot be expressed in words, however articulate or eloquent those words may be. As we well know, saints and sages down through the ages have left us many beautiful, uplifting attempts to tell us what they know. Yet however inspiring their hymns and testimonies may be, it is only in the deep silence of your inner being that you discover what they are pointing toward. This morning we'll talk about how to sink into that great silence. So before I go ahead with a reading from the Bhagavad Gita about the significance of this and something about how to go about it, are there any comments or questions? Or is there anything from your own wisdom that you'd like to contribute? Or any question or concern that you'd like to raise about this, the fact that it is only by going inward that we will find the truth of our being and find out what the word home actually means. All right, this is from Sri Krishna. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, the Yoga of Meditation. What is man's will, and how shall he use it? Let him put forth its power to uncover the Atman, not hide the Atman. Man's will is the only friend of the Atman. His will is also the Atman's enemy. For when a man is self-controlled, his will is the Atman's friend. But the will of an uncontrolled man, is hostile to the Atman, like an enemy. The serene one, absorbed in the Atman, masters his will. He knows no disquiet in heat or cold, in pain or pleasure, in honor, dishonor. For when a man's heart has reached fulfillment through knowledge and personal experience of the truth of Brahman, he is never again moved by the things of the senses. Earth, stone, and gold seem all alike to him who has mastered his senses. Such a yogi is said to have achieved union with Brahman. He who regards with an eye that is equal friends and comrades, the foe and the kinsman, the vile, the wicked, the men who judge him and those who belong to neither faction, he is the greatest. The yogi should, all right, we'll leave it at that. Now we're about to go into some instructions. So what Krishna tells us is that we have this will and we have this awakening. How do we marry that will to the awakening? How do we make that will work for us? And the answer is prayer. It's as simple as that. The first principle, of course, is that the divine being is the cause of our being, and all the power that creates every aspect of being is within us. We are that. So if you wish to take this course away from the world of being, creating, doing, and sharing, if you've had enough of that, that's why that little song this morning, "O Lord, take my hand, pull me on, draw me near, fill this heart." Because when we do that, when we are capable of that, and the capability is there, absolutely without question, all of the saints and sages have pointed toward this. So we are able to do it. What is wanting, oftentimes, is the want to do it. So the answer is ask. Ask. As it says in the evening prayer, "Breaker of this world's chain, fill our hearts full of love for thee." As it says in Chaitanya's prayer, "Grant me, O Lord, a steadfast love for thee." So this is how we move from and begin to do what Sri Krishna said, how we gain mastery of the senses and turn ourselves inward, find the truth of the Atman within ourselves, and then move forward, living from day to day, doing the necessary, but with this increasing knowledge born of the inner experience, and therefore the conviction that that is the truth of our being. It's only by sinking into the silence of your inner being that you find this truth. No matter how, we'll hear more about this as we go on, but no matter how much you read or think about it will only be like a guidebook, a map. People pointing toward the moon and saying, there's the moon. So, with all of that said, is there anything to contribute from your own experience of all of this, or anything that you would like to ask, or any concern you'd like to raise about what is meant by doing this because you decided you had this feeling, this awakening, and then how to do it, sinking into silence, and how to have the motivation to sink into silence. And that is to ask for it. Ask for it. Ask your inner being, where the power is of all creation and all transformation and all sustentation and protection for all of that.
I'll comment. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tom.
So the way I think of this, in my experience, the thing of being tired of doing, being, sharing, and creating is that it's a temporary state for me. Uh, I notice sometimes when I'm coming to the shrine, when I'm first coming into the shrine to meditate, I have this big feeling of relief. Like I can just stop. I don't have to do anything. I'm just walking in here. I can stop everything. And then, of course, I don't actually stop anything. I sit down to meditate and my mind goes and goes and bring it back, and my mind goes and I bring it back. But then there's moments in meditation where it's like I see through all that and I just let go of everything. And again, it's the same feeling of like, I can just stop. And then there's sometimes a tremendous feeling of relief and joy. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
but
Yes.
it's again, it's temporary. And the thing I'm thinking about is I've had this idea that the fact that it's temporary shows some lack of development on my part, which might be true. But also, all kinds of things in life are temporary. Like sleep is wonderful, but we just sleep for a little bit. And laughter is a wonderful thing, but I wouldn't want to be laughing all the time. So sometimes I wonder if this, what you might call an awakening experience or a letting go experience or whatever, is not something for me to uh, think that if I was a better person, I would be in that state all the time. But just think of it as this is a wonderful thing that's temporary, and then there's other wonderful things that are temporary, like being in my body and eating good food and talking to friends and being, doing, creating, and sharing. Those are all great. But sometimes it's just wonderful to let go of all of them, and then it can be really good to come back to all of them also. So those are my experiences and also my thoughts. Thank you.
How wonderfully and articulately said, Tom. And yes, but what do we mean by temporary? This whole life that we're living, this embodiment that we're in, is a temporary phenomenon. And so you're absolutely right. You have this sense of great relief when you have this feeling, I can let it all go. And that's why, as time goes on, as it is said, we have no fear of leaving this body. There's no reason not to enjoy this experience of being in the body. But the conviction grows in us that this is not, by any means, these limitations of time, space, and causation, and this feeling of temporariness. They're emphatically not the truth of my being. It is that great relief and joy that you spoke of that comes when you have this recognition. And it's no lack in you or in anyone else that all of the great saints tell us. You don't lose anything by finding your inner being. you gain everything. But one of the wonderful things that you gain is this lack of attachment to the being, creating, doing, and sharing. You can do it or not do it. You can be with it or you can leave it behind. But there does arise this feeling in us that these limitations are emphatically not the truth of my being. And so that's by sinking into this silence that you so eloquently spoke about, Tom, that we find the truth. And this is what Sri Krishna was just talking about. Anything else from anyone? That was wonderful, Tom. Okay, just in case there is any need for it, here are some instructions from Sri Krishna on how to turn your attention within. This is continuing from the chapter 6, Yoga of Meditation. The yogi should retire into a solitary place and live alone. It doesn't mean permanently live alone. You could, but it's not necessary. The yogi should retire into a solitary place and, let's just say, for that time, be alone. He must exercise control over his mind and body. He must free himself from the hopes and possessions of this world. He should meditate on the Atman unceasingly. The yogi should retire into a solitary place and be alone. He must exercise control over his mind and body. He must free himself from the hopes and possessions of this world. He should meditate on the Atman unceasingly. And it becomes a habit of mind as you practice. And here's a little bit about practice, of course. We know that we need to sit with our back and neck and head erect. We sit in a comfortable posture that allows us to sit for some time. The fact of the matter is that it takes 9 to 12 minutes just for the body to settle down, the body-mind complex to settle down. So then we've begun our practice, but we then find that this quietness comes over us. And the things that Tom Carr spoke about happen. We see that our mind wanders away and we pull it back. We see that it wanders away again and we pull it back. Ultimately, it becomes quiet. That silence of being below your thoughts, beneath all of that activity of time, space, and causation is there, and you begin to experience it. Please be aware that anything that you do at all in this direction is going to be beneficial to you, whether you spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes but the truth of the matter is that it will be at least 20 minutes before you begin to really sink into the quiet beneath the time, space, and causation activities of the body-mind complex. And if you really want to become a master of this meditative process, this meditative activity, you'll need to sit for longer. Now, there's nothing mandatory or nothing dogmatic about this. It simply is a matter of your wanting to. And that wanting to, as Tom pointed out, comes and goes. But when you persist over years and you pray for that desire to persist, you are able to sit for longer and longer, and you're able to actually achieve this state of union of your awareness with your consciousness, which is the truth of your being. And when you have that experience of the union of your awareness with the consciousness, this great relief and joy that has been spoken of by the saints and sages down through the ages occurs to you, and it changes your entire experience of the world around you. You then are able to participate in the world, but not feel entrapped by it. So anything more from anyone? Anything, any comments or questions?
Brother Shankara, this is Fred.
Yes, Fred.
Greetings and hello to everybody on the
Greetings
call.
to you too.
I just want to thank Tom for what he shared, because I've been struggling with this seeming, everything comes and goes, and sometimes good, sometimes bad. The wave in the ocean, the wave in the ocean.
Right.
And what he said about laughter really hit it right on the nose. He's right. You really wouldn't spend all your time laughing.
Oh,
But when it comes, it's great.
yep.
That's just such a great metaphor. I just wanted to say that. Thanks, Tom. And thank you, Brother Shankara. And it's good to see you on the call.
Well, good to be with you too, Fred. And of course it's a struggle. Of course it's a struggle. This manifestation of which we are a part and a creator of is eons old. The mental impressions, the impressions left on our mind stuff, which is the many nervous systems of our whole body and every cell of the body, they're innumerable and they're ancient. So, of course, it is a struggle. Of course, it is a struggle. And Tom has mentioned, not just this time, but other times, this feeling of, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not enough. No, that's according to everything that is understood from here. That is not the case at all. This sense of temporariness, that it comes and it goes until it's absolutely over with, we're told, which we'll talk about next week in the topic being setting aside the mirror, the setting aside the whole mirror of this reflection of consciousness and awareness, until there is no difference between awareness and consciousness. And there is no difference. It just seems to us that there is because of time, space, and causation. Until that's over with, it will be a struggle. But the struggle changes when you have access to what Tom characterized as that great sense of relief and joy. All of life changes. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Fred.
Well, I'd like to share something.
Yes, please, Robert.
Yeah. This morning, I generally do my meditation at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I said, this morning, for some reason, I was going through my meditation space and the piano just kind of called me. And I sat down to the piano and I just started playing. And I wasn't playing anything that I know. It was just I was just letting my fingers do what they do.
Yes.
And things I was playing things that I've never played before, or things that I was just allowing it to happen. And after a time, I recognized and I realized that this is meditation. A meditation.
Yes. Exactly.
Meditation does not have to be sitting and concentrating or not concentrating. It can be what you allow to happen on its own, like it seems you just have to happen. And I was there for 3 hours.
Oh, how delicious.
I just wanted to share that.
What you said, Robert, just now is just like, put that side by side with what Tom Carr said. And what happened was you discovered that meditation is not something that you just do with your eyes closed, sitting on a cushion. This great being that is the source and the reason for everything is there, and it flows through us. It is us. That is what one discerns in that silence. And then that's what was meant by all of life is transformed. And so you said the piano called to you. Now that is a truth. The piano is consciousness also. There is nothing but consciousness in its names and forms. And so, yes, this is why Vivekananda said, particularly making music is one of the highest forms of meditation. He said, music is the highest form of art. And for those who understand it, the highest form of worship. And so what you just said, Robert, now each one of us is unique and infinite. So we'll find our own way to joyously express it. But as you pointed out, when that was just flowing through you, there was no thought, it was just happening. And I'm sure the joy was intense and immense. Thank you for sharing that, Robert. And as I said, just pair that with what Tom Carr said, that sense of relief and joy that comes from having access. And he said, it'll come to him the moment he comes into the shrine, the minute he comes into the space. That sense. Then, of course, there's the sitting, if that's the way one practices. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? This is exactly what we're meant to be doing, dears. Sharing these things and encouraging one another in these ways. Robert has been practicing for many years, practicing not only his music, but meditation, like Tom. And so both of them can say to you, it takes many years. And it's never over till it's over. Anything else from anyone? All right. This is from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. It's a long chapter that's everything in that chapter takes place. All of what I'm going to read takes place on Friday, September 19th, 1884. Now, many of you who read the Gospel, all of you who read the Gospel, know that there was a person who lived with the Master by the Master's invitation, lived in the temple compound. His name was Hazra. So part of this that I'm about to read is a conversation between Hazra, who was given to reasoning and reading and studying the scriptures, and also doing a lot of japam, making a lot of chanting the mantra on his beads. But on this particular occasion, he asks Sri Ramakrishna, does God listen to our prayer for bhakti, for devotion? Master. Now, those of you who have reason to believe in the assertions of these great ones that come, listen so carefully to what Sri Ramakrishna has to say. Hazra asks, does God listen to our prayer for bhakti, for devotion? Surely, the Master replies, surely I can assure you of that 100 times. But the prayer must be genuine and earnest. Do worldly-minded people weep for God as they do for wife and children? So I'm going to read that opening again, just so that he asks, does God listen to our prayer for devotion? Surely, I can assure you of that 100 times. But the prayer must be genuine and earnest. Do worldly-minded people weep for God as they do for wife and children? At Kamarpukur, Sri Ramakrishna's home village, at Kamarpukur, the wife of a certain man fell ill. The man thought she would not recover. He began to tremble and was about to faint. Who feels that way for God? Now, God is not confined to any idea or concept or image. It is what it means to you. What that infinite, eternal, incomparable being means to you. And as has been pointed out, the only way we discover this is by turning within. We can turn within when we get this awakening that there is something there beyond the limitations we've experienced. And we pray for it. And we begin to slowly and slowly feel that way toward what we find within, which you may call by any name. Sri Ramakrishna is saying, who feels that way for God? To Hazra. Therefore, is knowledge, therefore, if there is knowledge of one, there is also knowledge of many. In other words, this aspect of our being, of manyness, is completely natural to us. If there is knowledge of one, there is also knowledge of many. What will you achieve by mere study of the scriptures? The scriptures contain a mixture of sand and sugar, as it were. It is extremely difficult to separate the sugar from the sand. Therefore, one should learn the essence of the scriptures from the teacher or from a sadhu. Afterwards, what does one care for books? Now, does that mean you shouldn't read books? No, it just means that it's not as effective as turning within. So Sri Ramakrishna then speaks to the rest of the devotees in the room. Gather all the information and then plunge in. One should learn the essence of the scriptures from the Guru, and the Guru can come to you in any form, knowing that it is the truth of your inner being that is speaking to you through any true teacher. One should learn the essence of the scriptures from the Guru and then practice. If one rightly follows spiritual discipline, then one directly sees God. The discipline is said to be rightly followed only when one plunges in. What will a man gain by merely reasoning about the words of the scriptures? Ah, the fools. They reason themselves to death over information about the path. They reason themselves to death over information about the path. They never take the plunge. What a pity. You may say, even though you dive deep, you are still in danger of sharks and crocodiles and of lust and anger. But dive after rubbing your body with the turmeric powder, that sharks and crocodiles will not come near you. The turmeric is discrimination and renunciation. This discrimination and renunciation is this feeling that, all right, there is this world of being, doing, being, creating, doing, and sharing, and there is joy in it. There's also sorrow and anguish in it. So that you won't be troubled by the things of the world if you use this power of discrimination and renunciation. This is the struggle. They reason themselves to death over information about the path. They never take the plunge. You can read the Svetasvatara Upanishad, which was my teacher's favorite Upanishad because of its ecstatic exclamation of the truths that Svetasvatara had found. You can read it and read it and read it and read it. And you will understand that Svetasvatara experienced these things. And you may stand in wonder. What wonderful things to experience. But until you do what Svetasvatara himself says to do in the Upanishad, then it will simply be something that you know. And when you lose this body, it will simply be another collection of mental impressions that will travel with you to your next incarnation. That's the story. They reason themselves to death over information about the path. They never take the plunge. What a pity. You may say, even though you dive deep, you are still in danger of sharks and crocodiles, of lust and anger. But dive deep after rubbing your body with turmeric powder. The sharks and crocodiles will not come near you. The turmeric is discrimination and renunciation. So anything more from anyone? We've heard some really wonderful things. And please understand that just your presence here, just your presence with us this morning is enough. Nothing is required of you. But those who do share really give us something. So is there anything you'd like to ask? Anything you'd like to offer from your own experience that will just enrichen what we're experiencing together? Okay. I'm going to go back and read this passage from Sri Ramakrishna again. We have a little time. I'm going to read the part that he says to the devotees. He's been talking about Hasra, and Hasra asks, does our inner being, which he calls God, does God listen to our prayer for devotion and to give us the desire to proceed? And the master says, yes, I can guarantee you that's true 100 times. But of course, the prayer must be genuine and earnest and persistent. And he says to the devotees, gather all the information and then plunge in. One should learn the essence of the scriptures from the guru and then practice. If one rightly follows spiritual discipline, then one directly sees the divine presence. The disciple is said to be right, the discipline is said to be rightly followed when one plunges in. What will a person gain by merely reasoning about the words of the scriptures? Ah, the fools. They reason themselves to death over information about the truth, about the path. They never take the plunge. What a pity. You may say, even though you dive deep, you are still in danger of sharks and crocodiles, of lust and anger. But dive after rubbing your body with the turmeric powder. The sharks and crocodiles will not come near you. The turmeric is discrimination and renunciation. As was said early in this talk, we hear from all quarters, from saints and sages down through the ages. Here's a fairly recent one. His name is Rainier Maria Rilke. He was early to mid 20th century. And you will hear echoes of what has been talked about this morning in this section of a poem from his from a book. I'll tell you the name of the book at the end. Only in our doing can we grasp you. Only with our hands can we illuminate you. The mind is but a visitor. It thinks it. I'm sorry. Only in our doing can we grasp you. Only with our hands can we illuminate you. The mind is but a visitor. It thinks us out of this world. Each mind fabricates itself. We sense its limits, for we have made them. And just when we would flee them, you come and make yourself an offering. I don't want to think a place for you. Speak to me from everywhere. Your gospel can be comprehended without looking for its source. Oh, listen to those lines. Your gospel can be comprehended without looking for its source. When I go toward you, it is with my whole life. That's from Rainier Maria Rilke's book, The Monastic Book of Hours. I'll read it again, and I hope that one of you will, or more of you will have something to say about it. Only in our doing can we grasp you. Only with our hands can we illuminate you. The mind is but a visitor. It thinks us out of this world. Each mind fabricates itself. We sense its limits, for we have made them. And just when we would flee them, you come and make of yourself an offering. I don't want to think a place for you. Speak to me from everywhere. Your gospel can be comprehended without looking for its source. When I go toward you, it is with my whole life. Okay, we have a few minutes. Anything at all anyone would like to share?
Yes. I like to embellish what something about that honesty and sincerity.
Yes.
I think that's a very important part of that process. And I will share with you how I used it this morning with that I use it all the time, with that 3-hour excursion on the piano.
Uh-huh.
I started out using the honesty and sincerity was to start out with a basic that applies. And this not only with music, this applies with whatever you might doing. You start out with something that's basic, a basic rule. I started out this morning with a scale, a diminished 6.
Uh-huh.
For a musician, they will know what that means. Now, I started out with that diminished 6 and playing that scale. Then after I was able to flow with that, then I allowed the universe to dictate and modify and extend and diminish what that scale is about.
Mm-hmm.
And the diminished 6 scale is like a 1, a flatted 3rd, a flatted 5th, and a 6. Now, there are other tones that are relative of that. And we don't know what all of the relatives of that are. Like with anything we might do, we don't know all of the other things that are connected and associated with it. But if you allow it to just come to you and happen, you will discover as you're going.
We start with our practice, as you said.
A basis, yeah.
You start with your basic practice. And then what happens is you discover that there is something. I mean, no words can describe it. That's what I tried to say in the beginning of this talk. No matter how eloquent, how articulate the person is, and we've heard some eloquent and articulate things this morning, including what you just said. But it will only be understood if we practice, if we sink into that great silence. Saying the sacred syllables Guru gave me, my mind somehow slipped into a great silence and was stilled. Nothing more to say. That's how it happened from here. For you, it happened in your own way. Each one of us is unique and an aspect of that infinitude. And so you will find wonders that you cannot even begin to imagine when you sink within. And when I say it transforms life, as Krishna said in that reading from the Gita, he says, you're no longer the things that trouble us in life. They're there, but they no longer trouble you in the way that they did. You're just not accessible to them in the way that you were.
Yeah.
Because you have changed.
Yeah, I call it just allowing it to be.
Yes.
Allowing it to happen.
Yes.
And not interfering with it.
Well, yes, that interfering with it is all that reasoning business.
Yeah.
And it isn't that reasoning isn't important. Reasoning is very important. But it's not the way to find our way home. Anything else from anyone?
Brother?
Yes.
Gaurav here.
Yes.
We've been listening to this beautiful session, and my wife has been listening to it too. So I was wondering, when we are talking about the essence, like Sri Ramakrishna says, capture the essence. It's similar to what Swami Vivekananda says is understand the passion of the Christ. Is that the same?
Yes, very much so. What was it that motivated the Christ? It was because he was one. He said, I am the vine, ye are the branches.
Yes.
Indicating that we are one with him. And where is the vine rooted? The vine is rooted in that essence. And the essence is inexpressible in words. Christ was quite eloquent himself. The Sermon on the Mount is an amazing.
But, well, what I find hard to understand, brother, is like all these enlightened souls means they have said the same thing, means capture the essence of the whole thing. Yet we have people who literally try to interpret these scriptures, and they literally have their own explanation, and they narrow their perspective altogether. Means I don't know if is it God's work. It is a realization that you need to get to that point. Man, you can take things literally. You need to understand what's the essence of the whole thing means.
What you just said about people limiting. yes, they do, they limit. As Meister Eckhart pointed out, the scriptures, the truth of what was saying was diluted by wise men for their purposes.
Yes.
Because their desires were to create a more balanced and just society. Now, of course, that immediately becomes abused.
Exactly.
Not immediately, but over centuries, it becomes abused. So there's two aspects. There's the essence, and then there's the application of it to our time, space, and causation experience, which of course cannot be uncontrolled.
Yes.
So people use those things.
Then again, it's kind of mind-boggling. Then again, I think like this too is God's plan.
Well, I'll tell a story. I'll tell a story.
Yes, sir.
This has to do with one of Sri Ramakrishna's closest disciples. His name was Baburam. He became Swami Premananda. After the master had passed away, and it had been some years, the Swami Premananda went to Puri to visit the temple of Jagannath. And as he approached the temple, there was on the temple steps a Christian minister, a Christian missionary. And he was denouncing in the most emphatic terms image worship and saying it's idolatry, it is not the truth. If you worship this image, you're worshiping, and he was going on in the way that you might expect a Christian missionary at that time, the early 20th century, to go on. And so Premananda began to start a chant. The crowd was listening to the missionary, and Premananda started a chant, Jai Sri Jagannath, Jai Sri Jagannath, Jai Sri Jagannath. And of course, the crowd took it up and soon drowned out the missionary, and he left the steps of the temple. That night, Swami Premananda had a visitation, and this is what these kind of dreams are called by the Swamis. He had a visitation from Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna scolded him vehemently. And he said, "What do you think you were doing? That too is my work. You go and find that minister. You go and find that missionary and apologize to him." And Premananda, of course, did what he was told. That too is my work. If we take seriously the words omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence, there can be nothing outside the divine's being and work. We may not understand it, we may not approve of it, we may not have any sympathy for it at all, but we dare not judge it. We have our inner tendencies, our inner, and they're spoken to in all the scriptures. But we must not try to impose our vision of reality on capital R reality. That's, when I say must not, that's dogma in itself. But, if you're going to adhere to spiritual practice, judgment is just a way to keep reality at arm's length. And so if we wish to keep reality at something other than arm's length, then we must not practice judgment.
Thank you, brother. That was really nice.
Thank you.
Brother, this is Fred.
Yes, Fred.
Your comment about judgment is a good one. I want to explore that a little. So, whenever I find myself being judgmental, whatever that means, we all know kind of what it means. I'm starting to notice that's an error. However, discrimination is somewhat related. There is right discrimination, and then there's being judgmental. Right? What do you think about that?
Well, you're absolutely right, and it is a very fine line to walk. It's not called the razor's edge for nothing. It is a very fine line to walk between, but the difference is when we find ourselves trying to impose our opinion or our sense of right and wrong on something, rather than simply saying, is this serving or is it not serving? Is it inauspicious or is it auspicious? And our standard for this is if it is something within time, space, and causation, it is by nature relative. And since virtually everything we can experience is within time, space, and causation, we have to be very cautious about imposing our opinions and our values. But we can say the difference between what is time, space, and causation and the reality is that the reality is eternal, changeless, and infinite. Well, we don't find that in the world of time, space, and causation. We find it only within. And so, and within all of these questions of judgment and concern and paradox and so on, Sri Ramakrishna says, when you come into the neighborhood of the divine presence, all these things resolve themselves. They're no longer of any concern. That get it, Fred?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay. Anything else from anyone?
Hi, brother.
Yes.
This is Sundar here. So, during the first part you were mentioning about, before plunging into the water or the sea, one should apply the turmeric, and then if they apply, they won't be affected. So, similar way, if a person lives in the world, if he can apply the discrimination and renunciation, he would be saved. So, like it is very similar. Like everyone wants to say, like, even if a person is driving a car, if he's having an insurance and everything fully covered, he is very safe. But what, like, it's similar to like what he can afford or what is his ability to do that. In a similar way, everyone wants to have the discrimination and renunciation, but how they can achieve it. I mean, like, it's not achieving it, like how they can have that. How they can have it inside themselves so that they are not affected.
So is there a question in there, Sundar, or is that just a comment you're making? Because I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a question like how can everyone like get that discrimination and renunciation before
Well, most people, as we know, don't in the least care to. They don't want to discriminate between, is this something of the relative world or of the eternal, that from which everything relative springs. They don't want to think about those things. And there's nothing wrong in that. It's simply a limitation that they're experiencing. But when one does then begin to look at the relative world, the world of being, creating, doing, and sharing, and say, this is inherently limited. It's limited by this action and experience suit that I'm in. There's only so much that I can know from the 5 organs of perception and the 5 organs of action. But if you turn within, then you find another reality that allows you to practice renunciation, because the things of the world are no longer the same for you. They no longer have the compulsion of their ages-old mental impressions. So lust and anger, Sri Ramakrishna was just pointing to the Rajoguna. The Rajoguna is of the 3 gunas. There's the guna of concealment, tamas. There's the guna of projection, rajas. Rajas is what is meant by Rainier Maria Rilke's poem, saying the mind creates its own, it creates itself and its limitations. That's the Rajoguna. And 2 of the aspects of Rajoguna that are troublesome for us are lust and anger. Now, lust doesn't just mean sexual attraction. It means the whole panoply of attraction and compulsion of the things of the senses, of the organs of action and perception. So when we discover that those things continue to push and pull at us, then we say, it's time for me to at least transform my relationship with this. And it might even be time for me to go home. So that allows you, through the power of sattva, the revealing power, to see the truth. Thank you for that question.
Thanks, brother.
Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om, Om, Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. So, this is joy inexpressible to be in your company. And until next time, may all of what was just said be a truth for all of us. Talk with you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Couldn't happen without all of us.
We love you, Shankara.
And I love you. Jai, 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 jai. Until next time, dears.